So if you're a front-end builder, especially one who's using AI, you know the pain, right? You spin up this absolutely stunning custom app. It looks perfect. It works perfectly. That is, until you hit refresh.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You add your tasks, you write down your notes, you upload your files, and then, poof, one little refresh and every single thing is gone. Your gorgeous app basically has the memory of a goldfish, and all your hard work just vanishes. It feels less like a real tool and more like a disposable tool.
But what if we could fix that? What if we could give your app a permanent memory? A way to actually store files, have contact forms that work, and even generate shareable links, all without ever touching a traditional backend? Well, today we're going to walk through 6 simple prompt-based hacks that'll turn your front-end projects into seriously powerful tools.
Okay, first things first. Before we can do anything fancy, we have to solve that fundamental problem. Our app forgets everything. We've got to make our data stick around.
And the solution, believe it or not, is already hiding right inside your web browser. It's a surprisingly powerful little database called IndexedDB. And look, we're not talking about a tiny bit of storage here. This thing can hold over 100 megabytes of data. That's more than enough to run some really complex applications. And all that data stays put until you intentionally clear your cache.
Now, the best part is just how ridiculously easy this is to implement. You don't need to mess around with complex database schemas or API calls. All you need is one clear prompt, telling your AI assistant to just save all the user's input, tasks, notes, whatever, directly into IndexedDB. That's it. One prompt and bam, your app suddenly has a memory.
Okay, so our app can now remember text and data, which is awesome. But what about files? Trying to store big images or PDFs or audio files directly in the browser? Well, that's just not going to work. For that, we need another trick up our sleeve.
And we've actually got 2 great free solutions here. For images, there's a service called ImageBB. It's super simple. You just need an API key, and it gives you private, unlisted links. For literally everything else, PDFs, audio, video, you name it, there's GoFile. It's a secure cloud storage service that's just as easy to set up. You just pick the tool that matches your file type.
Now, the secret sauce here is that you're not actually saving the file in your app's local database. That would be way too big. Instead, your prompt tells the app to first upload the image to ImageBB. ImageBB then hands you back a URL, and you just save that URL in your IndexedDB. Your app only has to remember the link, not the giant heavy file itself. Pretty clever, right?
And for all your other files, it's the exact same playbook, just with GoFile. The user uploads their file, your prompt shoots it over to the GoFile API, and you save the link it gives you back, along with any other related data, right into IndexedDB. So with these 2 hacks combined, your little front-end app can now handle pretty much any file you can throw at it.
All right, so your app now has a memory for data and for files. Awesome. But let's say you've built a website for a business. You've got that beautiful Contact Us section. But there's a huge, glaring problem. That form, it doesn't actually do anything. A potential customer fills it out, they hit submit, and their message just vanishes into the digital ether. Without a way to capture those submissions, your stunning website is completely useless for generating leads.
Okay, so here is a really clever workaround. We are going to hijack the power of Google Forms. It's simple. First, you create a Google form with fields that match your website's form. Name, email, message. Then you grab its public link and you make a couple of tiny tweaks. By changing part of the URL, you create something called a form response endpoint. And then you use the prefill link to find the unique ID for each field. This lets you build a special submission link that works totally behind the scenes.
And this prompt is the final piece of the puzzle. It tells your website's form to send all its data using what's called a post request, just a standard way to send info online, to that special Google Forms URL. The user never, ever sees the kind of ugly Google form, they only see your beautiful design. But on the back end, every single submission lands perfectly organized in a Google Sheet for you. It's a brilliant, brilliant hack.
So at this point, our app is fully functional. It saves data, it stores files, it captures leads. Now, let's add a couple of pro-level features that will take the user experience from good to great, starting with search.
Let's be honest, a standard search bar is kind of dumb. It only finds exact matches. But a fuzzy search is smart. Using a tiny little library called Fuse.js, your search bar can actually understand typos and find results that are close, even if they're not perfect matches. It's the kind of forgiving, helpful search we all expect from modern apps.
So just imagine your user has an invoice from a company called Black Mesa Research. They quickly type Black Mesa into the search bar, a simple typo. With a standard search, they get nothing, no results found. It's frustrating, and it makes them think the invoice is just gone.
But now, with fuzzy search, the app is smart enough to figure out what the user meant. It sees that Mesa is really close to Mesa, and boom, it pulls up the correct invoice instantly. This is a night and day improvement for the user, and it prevents so much unnecessary frustration.
And you're probably guessing what I'm about to say. Adding this professional-grade feature doesn't mean you have to rewrite your whole app. Nope. Once again, it all comes down to a single, clear prompt. You just tell the AI to implement fuzzy search using the Fuse.js library, and it does all the heavy lifting for you. All right, our final hack solves one of the biggest limitations of no backend apps: sharing your stuff. Since all your data is stored locally on your own computer, you can't just send a link to a friend or a colleague. But with another cool library called LZ-String, we can actually compress the content of a note and encode it directly into the URL itself.
The prompt here is super straightforward. When a user clicks a share button, the app grabs the content, uses LZ-String to shrink it down, and then sticks that compressed data right onto the end of the URL. When someone else opens that unique link, their browser reads the data from the URL, decompresses it, and voila, the content appears on their screen.
Now, a quick but very important tip here. This technique is absolutely fantastic for short notes, task lists, that kind of thing. But if you try to share like a whole novel, you're going to end up with an absurdly long, messy URL that might not even work. So, use this one wisely.
And just like that, with 6 targeted little hacks, we've completely transformed our simple front-end project. It's no longer a temporary toy that forgets everything. It's a persistent, functional, and honestly, a pretty powerful tool.
So let's just quickly recap your new toolkit. You can now save data locally with IndexedDB. You can handle images in any other file with ImageBB and GoFile. You can capture leads with that sneaky Google Forms trick. You can implement a really smart search with Fuse.js, and you can even create shareable links with LZ-String. The whole shebang. This really changes the game for front-end developers and solo builders. With just a handful of these clever, prompt-based solutions, you can build applications that feel totally robust and complete. And it really does make you wonder, for a huge number of projects out there, is the complexity of a traditional backend becoming less of a requirement and more of a choice? Something to think about.